enter the Empower Matrix broadcast. Are you ready? Travel back to the origin of the matrix of the ancient of ages. Break through the veil. Embrace the identity that is entwined one with yours. Live a God encounter, empower God destiny.
What we're going to talk about today in this intimate moment is about what is life. And I'm going to give you three letters that spell a word that pretty well summarizes what life is. And so if the question was asked, what is life? Question mark. There is a complete answer, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And that answer is God. Whatever you're doing, the answer is God. Whatever your life journey carries you on, whatever your life journey leads you to experience, that journey is God. Now, I know I'm probably listening to an audience right now that's coming in, and I know this will probably maybe get me some emails from what I call the choir. That's the church body that thinks that you can only minister one way, you can only say things one way, because if you're saying them another, even if you clarify them, well, you're just wrong, because we've been doing it for 50 years, 60 years, and this is just how it's done. And so one of the questions I would ask you if you're listening today is, maybe if you're in that choir group, is you've been doing it for 50 or 60 years, but if you were to step back, and I remember going down to the Pentecostal Holiness Convention, the International Pentecostal Holiness Convention in Texas, and I at that time was pastoring took over pastoring one of their churches, and that God had led us to and opened the door, and they opened up the book and they showed some of the ministers pictures of this church, the platform and the insides and all, and then they said, but now we want you to see what this minister has done with this church in the last few months. And they opened it back up, and somebody said, man, that's day and night. That's progression, is what one pastor said. He said, that's what we call progression. That's taking something and appreciating its value where it's at enough that you begin to enhance it even more, and you feel it's your obligation and your duty and your calling and your priority to make that thing even greater than it already is and play your part in it. And so if you were to step back from your life, I'd ask you that are in the choir, as we call it, many of them call it, for 50 or 60 years, if you were to step back, does your life look the same way as it did 50 years ago? Are you still sitting in the same seat in church? Are you still raising your hands the same way? Are you still quoting the same scriptures with no other defining but the one? You know? And so as these questions begin to come in and begin to come across, and I wrote down some of the things, as I said, they wanted to know. And that was where did this ministry start? How did it start? How did it evolve? How do you go through things in life? Someone to know, I'd love to be like you, and I'd love to be able to minister every day, or be in ministry all the time, and just travel and speak and preach and be with other ministers. And man, but see what you are looking at is maybe a minute part of this journey, and that means that it's kind of like the guitar player when he plays. I heard an incredible guitarist, and no, he's not gospel, but he's an incredible guitarist, and his name is Steve Vai, and he made a statement that he makes it all the time to people, that to get good, you got to spend time, and you got to go through things you don't want to go through, do things you don't want to do. Like he was talking about licks, for instance, playing licks. Sometimes you got to sit for an hour and just play one lick over and over that's only 4 or 5 notes. So that it's really what I believe he was trying to tell them is it's not just about rehearsing the lick and learning it. It's about that lick becoming so natural that it's not separated from you. And so as we go on this today about what is life, and I said that's like God, and I said we're going to have some listening today, and I'm glad you're joining me. So don't go anywhere, because we're really going to probably step out more to the arena outside the choir, and we're just going to talk real. We're going to talk some realism. We're going to talk life. We're going to talk about what really happens sometimes in ministry, and what happens when you're in ministry, and the things you face and the things you go through, and how life takes you through these journeys, and their empowerment. And so when you're asked that question, what is life? It comes back to those three letters, God. We're nothing without him, but we're all things because of him. And as I said, we're talking to an audience today that I know will be tuning in, since I'm doing some music on this one as well today along with it, in and out at different times. And I know that the way I'm talking is probably going to draw a lot of my friends that are outside the walls of a church. And so they may refer to God as higher power, supreme being. And they're talking about God. They're not trying to go anywhere else. They'll tell you very quickly. Let me just give you their statement many times to me when I have to talk to them, and they come and I mentor them or I counsel them. They'll say, now understand, I love God, but I just can't stand that choir sometimes. And I begin to look at that and understand that a lot of people love God. They just don't like the song the choir's singing about him. And we need to face that maybe we need to evaluate, step back and see if we're still that person 40, 50 years ago that came into God and got excited, and maybe then our excitement began to waver and go down, and it just began to go apart. I guess two scriptures I'm going to base all this on today, really talking to you. And it's, as we said, this is a different broadcast if you're tuning in. This is an intimate moment with the Global Matrix Center Ministry. And I guess myself, I want to tell you a little bit about myself as well. And I hesitate to do that because I don't like to talk about myself, but I do understand that God calls all of us, not just me, but many ministers and many women and men of God and apostles and pastors and teachers and evangelists and prophets. He calls them to the body of God. And we're here to be that vehicle that leads people to God. And with that said, the two scriptures I guess we're going to be dealing with, one is out of Zechariah, the fourth chapter and the 10th verse. And if you're in the King James and you went there looking, it's a scripture we've probably all heard a lot, called "Despise not the beginning of small things." And I want to read it to you. I wrote it down here out of the Message Bible. And it says, God gives a message to Zerubbabel. Speak to the mountain. So big a mountain. And I feel like today I'm going to be talking to some people that feel like you got a big mountain in your life right now. And that's what you're asking the question. What is this life I've found myself in? What is this journey I'm traveling right now? What is this moment? Man, I don't understand it. I mean, one day it seemed like everything was going great, and then the next day there's this big mountain that seems like it's just not going away. It's just there every moment, every second. I'm facing it and hearing about it. And God gives this message to Zerubbabel. Speak to this mountain. He said, so big a mountain. But the question is asked, who do you think you are? Here in the Matrix and across the Cyber Church, I would ask you today, ask that mountain, who do you think you are? I know you're big, but the next line is really powerful. He says, next to Zerubbabel, you're nothing but a molehill. And God is saying, I've designed you, and if you will let me take control of this walk and guide you, those mountains that look so hard and so heavy and tall and you're just uncrossable, I want you to ask him, who do you think you are? Because God chose me. I didn't say you had man's approval. I said God chose you. From the day you took your first breath, come out of your mother's womb, you were chosen by God, destined for incredible things in your life. You see, man, you don't know where I'm at. You don't know what I feel like right now. You don't know what I've been going through. You don't know this road I've been traveling, or you wouldn't be saying that to me. And I'm telling you that the reason that road is so rough and so heavy, and the mountain is so tall and so big, is because right there, the Word of God says to him after it says, you're nothing but a molehill. And he says, this is out of the Message Bible. Thank you, Pastor Karen, for getting that one for me. I love this Bible. After the Word of God came to me, Zerubbabel started rebuilding the temple. And it says he will complete it. I got good news for you today. You're going to complete it. You're going to complete your life. And we're going to talk about encouraging you today, lifting you up and letting you know that let's get out of the choir and let's start getting into the kingdom. And that's when it asks the question again in the the Message Bible, does anyone despise this day of small beginnings? Because they will change their mind. Now, in the Message Bible, I love what it says, it'll change their tune. So your mountains sometimes may be someone or something that's speaking, standing before you, telling you where you're never going to go or be. And God said, no. They will change their tune. They will change their mind. Just as he said here, when Zerubbabel sets the last stone in place. When you begin to build your building, and that goal, that journey, that destiny you wanted to arrive at, that life you want to live and exist in, when you put that stone in place and you've built the foundation, they will know God was with you. Once again, from the Matrix Center and to the Cyber Church as well, it's online right now. We're so glad you're joining us today for this intimate moment. We're going to get into what is life? God. Really can't say it any other way, but that higher power, that's true. He's the highest power there is. Creator of all things. I am. A lot of words given to him. A lot of things describe him. But really none can really identify the greatness of his glory and his majesty and his power. But we're going to get into this, and we're going to talk about it. As I said, the questions that come in, some like, when did you start? How did you get into ministry? How did you move into it full time? Tell us about some of the journeys you went through. Tell us about, I'm looking at things out there. And we're going to do that today. How about we do some music right quick? Would you like to do some music out there, Cyber Church, Matrix Center? Let's do some music, and let's I guess let's do a song. Let's do Innocent and Pure. How about it? Let's do it.
essence of the air I breathe. Lord, you're a love innocent and pure. Oh, you're an innocent love and pure. I bow down before your majesty. I'm consumed in all of your glory. I long Never been held in arms and love like yours. A love that's innocent, innocent and pure. Oh Lord, you a love innocent and pure. Well, here we go back.
If you're just tuning in, today we're doing an intimate look into the ministry of Global Matrix Center. And sorry about that little hum we had there, where those happen from time to time. And so that's what goes on in life, but that's about life. That's what it's all about. So let's get into a little bit of the questions that some of the people wanted to know. They wanted to know about myself, and you can cut this lapel down a little bit in the house here at the Matrix, and I'll be fine. Well, believe it or not, I started off at 6 years old with a little red guitar. Not this one. This one here, one of my newer ones, I believe, according to the back of it. Got this one about 2017. It actually has a name. For some of you who want to know about my guitars, I name my guitars. And this one here I'm using today on the program is called Lucy. That's after my wife, Lucy. And so when I travel, I always have her with me. And so that's a real cool thing. I know, don't wonder. Sometimes I wonder. Let me get back where we're at here. I started in Lakeland Heights Assembly of God in Grand Prairie, Texas, under a pastor named Lee Richards. And I remember at Christmas, my brother had been playing guitar. My brother played guitar. And he would never let me have his guitar, though, hardly. I mean, if I did get to play it, he sat right there, and after about 10 seconds, he took it back. Because he was afraid I was going to put a scar or a dent on it, you know. And so I opened up my presents, and there it was. And I remember the brand. I remember the brand of the guitar, man. It was a Silvertone. Some of you guys that play might go back far enough to remember those Silvertone guitars, and they came from Sears and Roebuck out of the Sears catalog. And I had been showing my mom and daddy these guitars, and back then, that was the closest thing that you had to a music store, because when you opened it up, you had amps and mics and tape recorders and guitars, and they wasn't the elite like Fenders that came on the scene, and the Les Pauls and the Paul Reed Smith, all those. But to me, it was a Fender, man. And it had like 3 switches, and that was like cool. I mean, I hit one of them and do one thing, hit another. That's all I needed. Now, I didn't know any chords, so I just moved the switches and banged the strings. Remember, despise not small beginnings. And whatever you're trying to do in life and you believe that you're not qualified for it, let me just tell you, God designed you to do the impossible. Can I say that to you again? God designed you to do the impossible. And so I've told this so many times. There was a gentleman that I just really look back and say, thank God for people who have more concern about keeping the youth and keeping the young people excited about God and doing things for God. And he always played, and everybody loved him to death because he played bluegrass and he played a banjo, and they just loved to hear him play the banjo. But he had this back then, and it was expensive then, but it's even way more expensive now. He had this D45 Martin, and he told me I could play it. So I did. What I call playing. Those who've heard the story before know that I played a G, and it didn't matter where anybody else went. That's where I went. I went to G. And so I kept playing that guitar until my daddy took me, and we did find a store before we made it to the Walmart of stores back then. Some of y'all will remember this. That's older musicians listening to me, Arnold and Morgan. And but we went to a place called Watkins Music in Oak Cliff. And I didn't know that that was going to be the day that I purchased, or my father purchased for me at 12 years old or so, or 11 when I got to this point, to this store, that he was purchasing for me stuff I was going to need that would actually start my ministry. Because at 12, 13, I was already going to churches such as Shady Grove Assembly of God, when it was over off of Beltline area, coming back through Grand Prairie there, through the backwoods there. I took old reel to reel. You know, we didn't have the punch up the song, do this. You had to go and it'd go, and you'd have to run it back, and you know, till you found the song you wanted to do, and then you could start there. Or you just let everything run and you just played out cool, you know. And what would we do without technology, right? And walked in that store, and my father bought me at the time a PA on the guidance of a man that didn't know anything about me or him. He said, I would just buy your son this PVPA right here. Got 2 little small speakers, and it's got a 4-channel, and that way he'll be able to sing, put his reel-to-reel he was talking about through there, and his guitar through there. He'll have enough channels, and it's got some effects, and he can just begin to just go after music with everything. And I remember taking that back and starting to play in my bedroom. Now, my bedroom was Carnegie Hall, and my mirror was my TV cameras. So I put on a concert every day, all day long if I was home. And I mean, I played the thousands. I mean, you're talking about virtual world. I was there before they got the virtual machines, okay? And so I began to play to that. And my father would do everything he could to keep getting equipment for me to help me, changed out mics, bought better mics and stuff for me. But I was playing one day, and I didn't think about this till just now, so let me just insert it. I was playing in my bedroom, and there was a group called the Texans that did gospel, which became known as the Masters 4 in Branson, Missouri later. And David Capps, the bass singer, big tall boy, lived 2 doors down, and he was walking past my mama's house and daddy's house, and he heard me. And he came over and knocked on the door and asked her if he could talk to me, and she said, sure. He said, I heard him playing music, and he said, I do gospel. Well, that was the entrance key to my mama. Now, if you'd have said anything else, you probably wouldn't have got in back then. But he said gospel, so that was the entrance key. And now, you've got to remember, now I'm sitting there, and he goes, man, I want you to come play with us at the Opry tonight. Because I had another steel guitar, and Kerry Moore still has one of these, a good friend from Lakeland Heights, and he still plays it today. He played it. Matter of fact, he's an award-winning pedal steel player here in the state of Texas. He just took another award this year, I believe, or got nominated into something there in the steel organization. But we had Howard Steels, and I had that, and he goes, man, you play pedal steel too? And I said, well, I'm learning it. And he goes, well, bring it too, and let's play. And so, short story was, I got hooked up with him and began to travel a little bit with him on the weekend and go up through Oklahoma and up through the Louisiana area and down through the churches. And I was really... it was really cool for me because I was the Pentecostal kid visiting Baptist churches. They were already Baptist, but I was getting to go play, and of course they told me I had to kind of hold it down because Baptist people wasn't quite as Pentecostal as they are today, you know. And so no offense there, guys, no offense. Come on, have a laugh with me. And so we played, and so I was really doing good, and then there came a storm. But none of you have ever experienced a storm, have you? Never faced a storm, have you? You're probably sitting there thinking, man, I've had the perfect life, no storms, no. No, I know you haven't. I know some of you are in a storm right now, and it's raging high. And but the good news is there's an anchor. And again, I'm going to ask that question we've been asking all the way through. Well, what is life? God. What is the anchor? God. What is the solution? God. There's no other way I can come to you and tell you, because without God, there is no answer. There is no solution. So let's keep that in mind today as we talk about this history. And so about 13 or 14 years old, I faced a storm. My dad passed away. And I believe that was one of my training moments in life that, as hard as it was, became the moment that I really got empowered. Because this storm really began me on a journey that I never turned back from. But I did stray sometimes. So if you're listening today and you're saying, man, I haven't always been there. Maybe you're saying you're not there right now. That's okay. Don't go anywhere. Because I want to talk about this journey of this storm. And Because life that's what it is sometimes. It's a journey. It's a journey called life. This is one of the songs that'll be on my new album, and so I'll do it for you right now.
I've been living a life. It's a journey that the good Lord gave me for a little while. Good time and bad times, but no regrets. Soon this old life will be over. I'll live it all over again. The journey we call life. There's a young man living his life. All he sees is the dreams that lie ahead. There's an old man sitting in a rocking chair, reminiscing about the days that passed him by. But they're all living on the same old road. They're homeward bound. I've been traveling on a journey. It's a journey the Maker gave me for a little while. Good time and bad times, no regrets. Soon this old life will be over. I live it all over again. The journey we call life. If you know somebody that needs to know about life, text them right now and say you need to join the live stream broadcast at Global Matrix Center, the Global Matrix Cyber Church Facebook page, or go to the website globalmatrixcenter.com. Get them on right now, because we're talking about life today. An intimate moment with the Global Matrix Center ministry. Questions that have been sent in about how did it start, where did you get your start, where did you begin, how's the journey laid out since then. That's what we're talking about today. What is life? God. There's a little girl. Oh, can you see her? There's a little girl playing with all her toys. I can hear the laughter in the air. There's a little lady gently wipes a tear from her eyes. Says, you know, that used to be me. Oh, but they're traveling on the same old road. They're homeward bound. I've been traveling on a journey. It's a journey the Maker gave me for a little while. Good time and bad times, no regrets. But soon this old life will be over. I live it all over again. The journey we call life. We've been traveling on the same old road. It's the journey we call life. got no regrets, and I got no sorrow. It's the journey we call life. Don't you know, it's a journey we call life.
Kind of puts it all down into it, doesn't it? Young man, young girl, older man, older woman. It's all the same road, same journey. We didn't plan our entrance, God did. We won't plan our exit, God does. But it's the same old road. It's a journey called life. Again, the question, if you're just tuning in, what is life? 3 letters. God. We're doing what people have texted in, emailed in today on this broadcast. It's a little different, I know. Hope you're enjoying it. We're going to get a little deeper. We're going to talk about how it really started after my father's passing away. I was going down Main Street on the very, I guess, what you'd call the east end of it. And I saw this tent going up, but I didn't think anything about it. And I was at school, and there was a girl, and she said, my daddy's a pastor on 31st Street. I said, oh, I live on 35th Street. And she said, you go to church? I said, oh, I go to church. I play guitar. She said, why don't you bring your guitar? She said, they're going to have a few more nights in the church, and then they're going to open a tent revival here. She said, they're planning on opening a tent revival. And I said, okay. I said, I'll come. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't go to play guitar. And I didn't go to really hear the preacher. This girl was really beautiful. She had black hair, and I thought she was really cool. So I thought, man, she took time to talk to me. I'm going to go talk to her. Now, I know some of y'all just wondering, what's this got to do with spiritual? Some of y'all are so spiritual, you're no good for nobody. Let me just throw that one out there right now. Let's get real. Let's talk about life, where we've been. Let's enjoy what God has done in our life. I would ask you a question. If God didn't do anything else for you than what he's already done to this point in your life. If he said, I'm not doing another miracle, I'm not doing another healing, I'm not doing another deliverance, but I'm going to let you live, and I'm going to let you enjoy what you have had and what I have done. He's not going to do that. He's going to stay with you all the way. But if he was, would you still keep serving him? Would you still love him the same way you do when he's giving to you? If it was your turn to give back? Well, it is our turn to give all the time. We're the vessel, we're the vehicle that makes life God. And so I went, and I was standing on this platform playing, and this minister, they told me, was from Chicago, which didn't mean a whole lot to me. Never been to Chicago at that time. Since then, I've been there many times, in crusades with ministers and stuff. And what we used to call, what y'all call worship leaders, we used to call front men. And that probably showed my age right there. But he came out and took the service, and he was playing, and all of a sudden I started playing some licks, and he kind of cut his head back at me and looked at me. And he backed up a minute after a few minutes of me playing behind him, and he said, play. And that's all he had to say. I'd got to a point where I was pretty good with lead guitar for the age I was at. That's what many told me, and so I believed them. So I just stepped out there and started playing. And after a couple of songs, he introduced the apostle from Chicago. And he came out, and he turned around and sung a couple of songs. And then he was singing his song, and he turned around and he looked at this minister and musician, and he nodded at him to play. And he looked at me and he went, play. And I remember hearing this apostle say to him, can he play? And I remember Brother Johnny going, and about the time I started playing, the apostle turned and went, and he became my friend later that night because he gave me $20, said, this is for playing with me tonight. I was like, wait. I'm playing guitar? I kind of had that kind of thing that I've heard Steve I talk about, you know. Man, you mean I can play and get paid for this? I like doing this and I love this, man. I know some of you are going like, oh, you should have been paid. That's God's talent to you. Don't worry. I got a scripture for you. The labor is worthy of hire. You go think about it. And maybe that's why we've lost a lot of our musicians and our talent that's anointed by God. And I said anointed by God to the world. There's plenty of musicians I have out there that love God, talk about God all the time. They're out there. And this is how they make their living. If that upsets you, that statement there, I'm sorry. Not really. You're into an intimate look, as you said, of the man behind the ministry and the ministry of Global Matrix Center today. And so it's going to be real, okay? And so I began to understand and finally realize that this man, Apostle Sam Woods, now pastor of Living Waters Tabernacle in Oklahoma City, would become a pivotal moment in my life for 20-something years. Daniel, I've heard a lot of stories about Moses, I've heard about Noah, I've heard about the Garden of Eden, but man, this is what I want to hear about. I don't want to just hear about it. I want to see this God that Apostle Sam Woods is taking out to the people, and he's ministering it to them and changing them. So for 20-something years, it was a privilege and honor to go all across this country with this apostle of God who's still living, and still an apostle, and still powerful, and who still puts at the forefront of everything he does. It's okay, and I love to study and I know the Word of God, but we need the demonstration of God. And Paul said it long before any of us did. I don't come with just the enticing words of man's wisdom, but I come in the demonstration of the power of God. And I saw these miracles, I saw these healings, and he caused this hunger in me that to be in the presence of the Most High. I just got to where going to church every night and day services, man, that was just the coolest thing to be, because I knew every time we got there that I was going to get to see the hand of God do what was impossible to man. And so I got to know through this journey that I traveled that there was only one answer to life. Apostle Sam Woods taught me that there's only one answer to life. God. He's everything. And so through that time of working with Apostle Sam Woods, I met my wife, Lucy. Her family came to our church. She was the outlaw of her family. Don't nobody tell her I told that. I know y'all are going to text her right now and go, listen to the broadcast. He called you an outlaw. She's my outlaw, okay? But through all those times of those years that I guess you could say I was traveling there, because there was times when I was gone for a month and a half before I'd get home. But she stayed there. She never complained. And I always get tickled because her mother used to tell me and her, you don't want to marry him because when you do, you're not cut out for ministry. You'll never make this journey called, you're never going to survive. Now this is talking about my life, so it's going to get real here for a second. Sorry about this, guys. But then her mother came back and said, you know, every child I have has divorced and remarried in some form. But the one that I thought would never make it has went through hell and fire. And wait a minute, you said she went through hell. I thought she was in ministry. Well, sometimes it happens in ministry, and sometimes it happens through ministers. And so I say a lot of times I gave her a lot of hell. But she was stronger than the hell I gave her. Can you say that? That's a question I'd ask you today. Can you be stronger than the hell that's coming into your life so that you can see the heaven unveiled? I don't know how your way you're talking. I don't know if I'm into how you're talking. I didn't ask you to be. Yeah, you come in and ask me to talk about my life. And so today we're going outside the church, outside the choir, and we're talking and making it real. Once again, welcome online, Cyber Church family. Welcome online to those. We've been pulling from several different foreign countries. If you're listening today, and I'm sure you are, because you have been for the last couple of weeks, thank you for tuning in. Because the God I'm talking about is God right where you are in your country. He works there the same as he does here in America. And I went for 20-something years, as I said, and then he made this statement to me that just really tore my world apart. I had my plan. Do you have a plan? Has your plan ever disappeared? Mine did. I had a plan. My plan was that I was going to stay with Brother Woods, and someday, man, because he would call me his spiritual son. And I said, man, he's gonna pass the mantle. He's gonna pass the ministry. He's gonna pass it on to me because I'm there day and night. I stay day and night. I've learned that sometimes the mantle can float down through the air before it gets to where you can catch it. Somebody will get that one out there. And so he came to me and he said, you got to get out on your own. I said, I don't want out on my own. I like this right here. It's comfortable. I love doing just this right here. You know, doing the music and playing for you. And someday when he said, no, you're not meant to carry this song. God has called you to a ministry of your own. And little did I know, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments before we go off the broadcast, how that same statement would come back to haunt me in just the last 10 years of another prophetess saying the same thing to me, that I didn't want to receive it then either. Or either, should I say, for correct English. And so I really was just crushed because I had just planned all drew up how it was going to go. It was going to be just so cool. And then he did to me what the eagle does to the eaglets. He kicked me out. And I was so mad. I was so mad that at that point I began to say, I don't want anything to do with ministry anymore. I don't want to be around it, blah, 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 going on, Because my blueprint that I drew got upset. I forgot to consider that maybe there was some renovation going on that the master was doing, that maybe I should consult the architect of life and find out what was happening. But I was young and I didn't do that. I just got upset. And then I left gospel and went secular for over 3 years. Had a band called the Midnight Fire Band. Don't know if Reese Ford's listening, but if she is, hi Reese. Glad to have you back in Texas from Washington. And so we had one incredible band for over a year and a half, 2 years. And we took awards in the state of Texas in the music industry. And I had really decided that people around was saying, this band will go to the label. You'll begin touring pretty soon. Soon you won't. People came to hear us and they would ask all my musicians behind me and myself to sign things. So they said, the next thing you'll be on the road and you guys you'll be climbing. You'll be climbing the industry and going, and we'll hear you on the radio. And we signed with Xerox Records. I did for a little short period of time out of LA. And but then one night I walked into my investor, and God has this strange thing. He never consults you. He just kind of says, I got this, so the best thing you can do is you better put your hand in my hand, because I know where I'm going and you don't. And the investor just looked at me and said, I'm changing everything up. Now you're talking about a man who had made lots of money with our band playing, starting 2 nights a week, finally to 6 nights a week, and never not a packed out house. And I said, what? And he goes, I'm changing everything. And I'm just going to change the style of music. And someone even asked him, said, you're going to change the style of music? There's nothing wrong. They do everything, but what are you doing? Oh, I just think we need something new. And again, there was that storm that came into my life. But I knew deep down inside that what I was doing couldn't last, because that wasn't what I was called to, because I had this other friend that had come into my life, and even when I was playing secular, he would go have chicken fried steak with me. And he always had the same question when we sat down to eat. Son, how long are you going to keep doing this? How long are you going to keep running? You're not called to do that. God has called you to the kingdom. You're one of His. You're a warrior. You need to be ministering. You need to be mentoring. You need to be teaching this message of God. How long are you going to keep running? And I would get so upset at him. I said, I'm not running, man. Do you know what kind of money I make? He goes, I didn't ask you about money. Who is now went on to his reward in heaven. And he called late one night, and I picked up the phone, and he was working on some of my songs. And so we were really cutting outside the box. We did titles like Warrior to the Forbidden Zone, Tribal Rage, Angel with Broken Wings. It wasn't your typical gospel music. It was music that I was writing and doing that was what I called outside the box. It had a southern rock feel. Come to find out later, I understood exactly why when I got deeper into who Rusty Burns was. One night, I had come out of Oklahoma City, and a young man had told me, man, I love your music. I'd done a few songs in a crusade there off of the album, and they said, we love this, I love this music. He said, but it reminds me of a band called Point Blank. And I said, Point Blank, I never heard of Point Blank. He goes, you need to look them up, man. And so I didn't look them up. I just went back and come back, like I was doing in the studio the next day, and I went back in to do some more tracks. And sometimes you're blind and don't even know you're blind. Sometimes in life, the answer's right there with you. I'm talking to somebody right now. Sometimes the answer's right there with you, but you're blinded to it because you're doing what I've done too many times. Drew out your own blueprint without consulting the master architect. And I said, hey, Rusty, tell me something. I said, I did a couple of these songs last night in Oklahoma City, and I said, this kid came up to me and said that it reminded him a lot of a band called Point Blank. Can you tell me about Point Blank? And I remember it was so cool. Rusty was doing something on the board, and he was mixing, and he never really looked at me or anything. He was still looking down because he was concentrated. And all he did with his hand, he took one hand and he went. And I turned around, and behind me at the wall, and there was this huge, humongous poster that took the whole wall. And it said, Point Blank, and there was Rusty standing. He said, that's my band. I started that band, Point Blank. And he said, we had record labels with Capitol and all. We traveled and toured and opened for some of the major rock bands. And I said, whoa, you're Point Blank. And he goes, yeah. And I said, why are you working on my music? And he goes, I like you. I like the music. I said, well, thank you. And he said, I like the way we talk about God when you're in the studio. We don't talk about the choir God. We talk about the revelation God. And you go deep. And he said, you remind me, and I know this is going to upset some more people right here. I seem like every once in a while I get going really good, and then I just like put this nail in the coffin, you know. And that's okay. It's an intimate moment with Global Matrix Center Ministry and myself. And he said, you remind me of a guy named Gene Scott. He said, we love to listen. Said, me and my buddies listen to him teach. And said, we love to hear him teach. And said, I told him about you and how you teach. And so a few nights later, like I said, I'd come home and I get this call and he goes, hey, I got this brilliant idea. I got a brilliant idea. And I said, really? You got a brilliant idea? And he goes, yes. I said, what's that? And he goes, you need to start a church. I said, that is not happening. I said, let me just tell you like I've told everybody else. There's a country song that's on an old show called Hee Haw. It says, we're not the gossiping type. So I told him, I said, you're old enough to know that show. I said, when I was a kid, we watched that and he said, they're not the gossiping type. I need to let you know something. I'm not the pastoring type. And he goes, I said, evangelist, teaching, whatever. He goes, well, I don't really care. I said, I don't really want church either. I said, I don't like church. Now, some of y'all are looking, probably, if I could see, you probably have that look on your face, but some of y'all said the same thing. You love God, but you just don't like church sometimes because it just seems like when you get into that church, it's that man thing, and when you get into God, it's a whole different ball of wax. And boy, you better believe it is, because what is life? God. That's what we're talking about along with us today. And so we wrote these songs, and like I said, it was not he's calling me, telling me, we need to do this. And I said, okay, all right. And so as I thought about it, and looking at all these questions that people had sent in and asked me, I began to think that really the beginnings of the Matrix Center, I would have to say, started with Rusty Burns, because he said, look, man, we don't have to do a church, but how about we do the music off the album, and man, you perform it, and then you teach what you talk about here in the studio. And I said, I was really trying to still get out of it. I said, no. See, if I was to do that, I would want a band, and I'd want, a good band, and I'd want a good PA, and I named all these things off, and all of a sudden he just looked at me and said, I got all that, man. You just do that. I'll take care of that. And I'm like, shoot, this did not work out the way I wanted it to. I'm trying to get out, and he just put me in whole fire. So we went to a hotel that's now torn down. We got a parking lot there now that was in Arlington. And got a room. And the first night we walked in, we had about 6 people. I think it was about 6 people, maybe 7 at the most. 3 of them was my family, and the other 2 was Rusty and his girlfriend. And so you can do the math. We only had about 2 people that showed up after that. And hotel room was like almost right at $375, $400 for the night. And we got it. And I'm sitting there going, I got the money to pay for it, but I'm going to be able to use this. I'm going to say I had to come out of my own pocket, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do this. And we got the offer and counted it, and it was something like 3 times what the room was. It might not seem a lot money, but it was enough to let me know that something was happening here. And so you might say that, yeah, it was the beginning of what was warriorship, and we called it Millennium 2000. And we began to create these songs and create this ministry that delved into the revelation of God and the sonship of God and fatherhood. And those may be strange names to some of you right now, but sonship is the most powerful thing there is, because it introduces you to the identity of fatherhood. And God showed me something a couple of days ago, and people run around and say anyone can be a father, but not everybody can be a dad. And God told me, he said, you need to change that back around. I said, God, they're not going to like that. He goes, there's a lot of things I've had you do that people don't like, but you do it because I tell you to. I'm the architect. And what he explained to me was that the greatest thing you could be called was a father. Because if you take the word father and you look in the Bible, man, you're going to find a discipliner, a person who trains, a person who mentors, a person who loves, a person who's a covering. I mean, you got this list of what a father is. And that's what he calls himself, our Heavenly Father. And he said, when you talk about a dad, he said, a dad to me is somebody who can have a kid, shows up sometimes, plays with him every once in a while. But he said, a father, he's intimate and involved with that child. And he said, so that's what I want my sons to understand. As they become sons of God, I'm going to be intimate with them. I'm going to be involved. I'm going to be there to guide and to lead them. And so we began that, and we were always calling ourselves warriors. We were all of the deal, which led now to what many know as the empowerment matrix. I believe that was the beginning of it. And we began to see what God was doing. We began to see the audience grow, and it got larger and larger. And so I guess you would call it that the beginning of this ministry would have been probably Millennium 2000, which has now led us into what I believe is the final stage, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. How about we do some more music? God, can do some music? How about I do an instrumental for you? I feel like doing an instrumental for you. Do this in honor of Rusty Burns. Can't play nowhere near like him. So I said, an incredible, phenomenal guitarist, now went on to be with our Heavenly Father, but do the best I can. And
hope you're enjoying this. I'm enjoying playing for you today and doing it for you today. And let's kind of get a place to kind of close this down and go into a little bit and kind of go over it a little bit. And so, as I said, I believe that time in Arlington, Texas was the moment, because we moved the hotel then to Richland Hills, into a hotel there that we had found because we felt like it'd be closer to the people that we reached out to and could reach. And we were looking to minister to outside the walls of the choir. People that a lot of churches didn't want, didn't believe God, they knew God, couldn't be saved because of how they looked. A lot of criteria that was being put on them that God just don't put on you. If you're listening to me today, just shake off the burden of that load that the world and the church is trying to put on you, and understand that God is freedom. And all he wants to hear is that you love him, and that you receive him, and that you want him as Lord of your life. And so we moved into, as I said, into that church there, and the demonstration of the glory of God just began to fall. And I don't mean this in no way or form bad, because these are my buddies and friends, but this is how people kind of saw us. The lot of church world here in the local area said that's just a bunch of people playing church. And that kind of upset me, because I knew these guys wasn't playing. And I knew that the only reason people believed that was because it didn't fit the mold that they were being put in by the people looking at them. But I never heard them really ever say anything about anybody going to church or going to a church building, how they didn't approve of that, or they didn't like. They just said, we don't like church the way it's portrayed many times. And it's often been said over and over by many, and even by a philosopher who was asked. When they asked Gandhi, what do you think of the American world's God? And he said, I have no problem with their God, it's just his PR department stinks. And sometimes it does, folks, we have to admit it. Sometimes we don't do the job we should be doing, loving people and caring for people. And we saw a man, as I've told the story so many times before in services, about walking off the street that had lost his company, lost his family, lost everything. And through the gift of knowledge, God began to use me and allow me the privilege to be used to minister to this man, that he was not alone, but God knew right where he was. I saw my keyboard player come to me one night that was playing with us, and he said, Pastor, I got to let you know I'm moving back, I believe it was to California. And I said, you're going to California? Why? And he goes, because what you prophesied over me, what you spoke into my life, it's happening. He said, my wife, I called her and asked her if I could come home, and she said, no, you can't come back right now. And he said to her, but I'm in church. I want to restore my family. I've got a daughter, and I want the family back together. And she said, well, if you're really real, I want you to move out here and get a job. And I want you to go to church with us. Not marrying you. I'm not letting you back in the house right now. I'm not remarrying you. But I want you to come out here. And he said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find a good church. And he said, I know I'm not going to find anything like what I'm here. I love my church here, the Millennium 2000. He said, but I'm going to find a church and I'm going to get in it. And I'm going to show her that I really have become to know God because of the ministry that's here in this building. And he said, I wanted to know if it was okay. I said, man, get on the bus, get on the plane, do what you got to do. I prophesied this. God told me to tell you this, and we spoke this into your life. Man, go get it. And he took off. And then we had this other girl, Barbara. She managed, she might be listening right now because she's been on a few times and clicked onto my sites. If you are, Barbara, I think you're in East Texas still. Love you, girl. Appreciate you. Matter of fact, I'm watching several of the online people. Thank you. Love you. God bless you. Appreciate you listening today, putting up with this intimate look at Global Matrix Center, and is what someone to call the man behind the ministry, but there's no ministry without God. So there's not a man behind ministry. Let me just re-clarify that for you and make sure you're straight. Ministry is real when God is behind the ministry, and that's the only time. We're just the vessels and the vehicles he uses. And she managed one of the most successful
entertainment places in the Fort Worth area, Dallas-Fort Worth area. And she was a manager, and she came and she said, hey man, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't go back in that place anymore. There's just something about it. She said, I know you told us that when God got ready, he would move us out. And she said, God's moved me out. She said, I just wrote on a letter, put the keys in a letter in an envelope, put it on the door, and told them, I just can't come back in there. When I walk in, there's just something about the spirit I can't stand. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of there. And it wasn't too long till I got a message from her that she had wanted to work with young girls, I believe it was, that had went through problems in life, and she got that chance. She got that opportunity, and sure hope she's still doing it. If not, I know God's elevated her to a higher level then. And probably the greatest explosive moment in the ministry there in Richland Hills was when a lady named Annette. She had a tumor, I believe it was a tumor, in her head. And I called her out and I told her that God will heal you, and he's healing you right now. God said you won't have to worry about that tumor no more. And so she went back to the doctor, and they took an x-ray, and they said, well, we don't know what that preacher told you, but the tumor's still here. Well, Annette had really got on fire. She was really, she got an experience with God. And she told him, she said, I don't care what your x-ray says. The man of God said, I don't have a tumor and I'm healed. So I don't care how many pictures of it you got. It's just not there. And they said, you need to take this seriously. You know that if you get a lick on that area, it's not an if or an and. You will die instantly. And it wasn't but a week or so, and she said she began to ask God. Anybody ever question God besides me? And she began to ask God. She said, am I healed? Prove it, God. Be careful what you ask from God, because he loves to answer your call. He loves to answer your call because he loves you that much. And she managed some apartments, and she was working outside with some of them, and she was down on the lower level, I believe it was, or something. And somehow or another, something fell heavy and hit directly on the very spot that they said if she ever got a lick, she would be instantly killed. She'd die. She'd instantly die. And she said everyone, her husband, kids, neighbors, they all knew about this. And so when they saw it hit, she said everybody went, and she said, I just kind of froze for a second and looked around and looked at them and said, well, we just disproved that doctor. I'm still alive. Y'all still going to have to put up with me. I'm alive. And she said, I learned at that moment what you told me, that what the x-rays say is not the final word. What the doctor says is not the final word. She said, so I just want y'all to know that it's a privilege to be in a house that has introduced us to the power of God. Because these things a man can't do, but he has taught us God can do it. And I never forgot that. And then I want to close with, then there came a storm. It seems like every time before you get to the next stage of your journey, there comes a storm. And most of us don't like storms, but I'm beginning to learn that storms, if you will see them in who they are your empowerment to a greater moment and a greater time. And so I want to close with There's a Storm. If I can get one of my team to come get this guitar for just a moment. I want to get out of it for a second so I can talk to you. And I appreciate my team that works with me here in the Matrix. And although especially my daughter, who runs everything, and I tell her she runs everything, is everything, and I'm hard on her, but I'm only hard on her because she's awesome. I learned from Dr. Grant a great line that he said about his daughter. You could only see me. You could only see yourself through my eyes. You'd understand what I see in you. The greatness, the awesomeness of who you are. And as I said, there came this storm. What I had become dependent on, man, walking in, great musicians, the best in the town, really was. I mean, these were award-winning musicians playing for me that God had just brought into our ministry, and they sat down and played and loved to come grow in the ministry and fellowship with one another and they became a family. Isn't that what it's all about? Isn't God about being a family? Since He's the Heavenly Father, don't you think all those kids ought to learn how to get along? And all the uncles and all the aunts and all the cousins, all those people in God's kingdom, maybe they ought to learn how to get along since we got the same Father. Just a thought. Yeah, do with it what you want. Oh, that's right. That's what we do, right? You've heard me say that 1,000 times. And it wasn't because of the people in the church that we had a storm. It was because of the choir. Choir started showing up and asking me why was this one in the church and why was that one in the church and why would I put somebody looking like that in my platform. One of them pointed at Rusty Burns, wanted to know why if he had an earring in his ear or a lightning bolt and a Special Forces hat on, why in the world would I have him leading worship and doing music? And I just simply looked at him and said, because he plays better than you. That was a simple answer. And walked off because I didn't have time to mess with that because that was just a bunch of garbage. But they began to do that, and they began to make those people feel very uncomfortable. And then they started telling me, you're bypassing, you gotta preach sin to these people. They've been living a sinful life. You're going to have to preach sin hard to them. And then they got upset at me because I said, why do I got to preach sin hard? Why can't I just preach God in the light? And where there's light, darkness won't be able to stay. Do you know that if God is in you, darkness will not be able to stay? You may run some like I did. That doesn't mean God is not there. God was in those moments more than He ever was. There's stories I could tell about that man, we're just touching a few stories, just a few things, the very minute things of what God has done. We've seen nights in this church where this storm hit, but when this storm hit, the choir came in and they couldn't accept God was moving in this building with people dressed in attire that didn't fit their criteria for looking like a Christian. God shed some of those things off of us so we can put on His wardrobe and quit trying to dress ourselves what we think a child of God looks like and let God dress us like He knows a child of God is. And so they just literally was like a storm that just came in of people that was supposed to love God and just totally annihilated this building. And if I had it to do over, which we don't, but if I did, I will never allow the choir to come in and destroy a move of God again. I'll take a stand, I'll put both feet down, and I'll say, this is not about the choir, this is not about the social media, this is not about what's approval by you, this is about what thus saith God, and if God said it, both feet are down, I'm going forward, we're going forward, and we're going to do the incredible of God. And, but even through all this, Pastor King didn't give up. Come back over. You gotta get to preaching again. I said, I don't want to preach again. I done seen what happened to this. I'm tired of it. And he says, no, I got this little building we got to go to. Got a building. He said it's owned by an organization, but I found out they'll rent it to us on Sundays. And that turned out to be New Life Worship Center, International Pentecostal Holiness Church, and in Haltom City. And we began again with just a few from the old church. Remember that scripture earlier? Despise not the beginning of small things. Here we go again in a small thing. And we didn't realize that it's not about the picture that we want to paint, but it's about being the picture on the canvas of God's painting. It's that painting called What is Life? God. That's what life is. And I met some phenomenal people there that have ever since, been a part. They're more than friends. They're a crucial part of what I do and have always been a crucial part of what I do. And they came in and Pastor King introduced them to me, and I got to talking with them, and then they just came in and they brought some keyboards, and here we started again into worship. But this time I believe it was the true worship more than ever. It wasn't great musicians showing off their awards and what everybody thought about them. But it was people who had the heart of worship, the heart of ministry. And as I said, they became a crucial part of my journey from that point on and today as well. They're still there as advisors and intercessor and prayer warrior. And so this is where I met Pastor Richard and Karen Duke. And they just simply came in, as I said, and just started doing what is one of the most important things in my ministry, and that is the sound of worship, a particular sound, not just a song, not just music, not just somebody lifting hands, but going into beyond the veil, to the worship beyond the veil. They began to take the people there, and all of a sudden we began to see miracles. We began to see cancers healed again. And there were nights when we would see young people, as the audience began, the congregation began to grow, and we would see young people laying prostrate on the floor, speaking in tongues flat out. And God was making this move. And then there came that final encounter that led to what would be the journey to where the Matrix Center is today. The city came in for some reasons. There was a man over it didn't like church, didn't like preachers, didn't like ministries, didn't want them in the Haltom City area, and he was on the board. And he found a way to get the building shut down, a building that we had blood, sweat, and tears in and stayed in. Was so proud of that little building, if you want to call it that, because that little building, though it was little, housed the presence and the power and the glory of an awesome, awesome God that could not be measured. And so for a while I returned to music and traveling. And just before I had done that, of starting to travel, we had been coming back through the Austin area. And Pastor Karen said, "You need to come to Austin, Texas." I literally started laughing because I said, "I don't know nobody in Austin." But I did. Later on found out I did. A Pastor Art Cardenas, who opened his doors to us. And if he's listening, because I know sometimes I've seen him click on, and he's a busy man, but if he's listening, thank you for that opportunity to minister in your church and be a part of your ministry at that time. We ministered there, and I traveled for a little while. And somehow or another that led back to meeting an incredible prophetess. A woman of God that had a revelation of God like probably no one I had met in a long time since the days of Apostle Woods, because Apostle Wood had that same ministry, that same revelation. And I had not been involved a whole lot with Pastor Woods. I'd been doing my own stuff and that God had called me to, and here I was again, kind of in limbo. But here I met this prophetess, and there she said the exact same words to me. I got to cut this a little short and get us off the air. We're running out of time. They're letting me know we've ran over a little bit. Sorry about that. And so I met her, and she said the same words that Apostle Woods did. I face these words again. For 2.5 to 3 years traveling with her, she would remind me that I was there for one reason only, that she was to give me the opportunity to do study without pressure, because I was going to pastor. That word that I did not like. But she said, you won't be the ordinary pastor because you're a warrior, and you will bring the revelated word of God, and you need to take this knowledge that God has given you, and I want you to Make it as simple as you can, but don't lose any of the potency, don't lose any of the power. You take this time, delve into it. And that I did. And there I began to understand that I had been called to a ministry of sonship, but it would lead to what is now the Global Matrix Center and would lead to a message that I call the fatherhood, the ultimate message of God. The message that very seldom gets touched. A lot about sonship. But there is a point beyond sonship when the son becomes a father. And it changes everything. Takes on those identity characteristics. And I believe that at that moment, even though I fought and told her the same thing as I did Brother Woods, I won't leave. I just want to sit here and work your ministry, sing a song a night or something, and PR and do all that stuff. And just let me be here and you go do it. And she goes, no, it's not how it's meant to be. It's just not meant to be. You have your own ministry that God has called you into, that he needs you to do what he's called you. He's blueprinted you into the kingdom of God. And I come to a point where in the last few days, I've realized that, as me and her talked many times about it, there's an uprising coming in the land. And I'm going to close out with this here. There's an uprising in the land, and it's the sons of God stepping into the fatherhood. It's the most incredible journey. And someday for each of us, we'll begin the journey of eternity with our Heavenly Father. And as I said, I've faced these storms and I've seen the greatness of God and I've seen the impossible in the eyes of man. And only God could do those things. But most of us, many times, we face a storm that's much more simpler than needing something gigantically impossible. We face the storm of peace. Needing peace, needing a surety, knowing someone loves us, knowing someone cares, knowing that someone will stop and take the time to say, what can I do? What do you want me to do? What can I do for you? I want to be the servant. I want to be the fatherhood that's looking over you with a covering. I want you to see God through me. I want you to know God through me. I want to do the things that God has designed for me to do. And I want that to be a critical part of your life. I want to input into you what God has inputted into me. And so if you're listening today and you're facing that storm, what to many may seem simple, maybe you're someone with financial security, but really, you don't have peace. You know you can weather the storm, but you really worry about the damage the ship may take outside the storm. Maybe you're someone who's been told you're just a misfit. You don't fit in anywhere. And God says, man, I molded you, I created you, I formed you. I breathed my breath into you. And then I shed my son's blood on Calvary. He died for you so that this misfit could be reborn into the family of God. If you're one of those today, I want you to know the good news is the answer to what you're asking. What is my life? Is it valuable? What makes it valuable? What's my purpose? What journey am I on? Again, let me answer it with one word. What is life? God. So I leave the air today. I want you to know. With God, all things are possible. And with God, you can do all things, but without Him, how reckless it would be to live this life without God.
Because there is this place that God takes us to. It's called the secret place. The secret place of God. And I want you to say right where you're sitting, if you're feeling that way right now, and you don't know God, or if you do know God, pray it with me anyway. Let's all just pray it together and say, Father, I need you right now. I've come to the end of my ability. I've come to the end of my understanding of how to deal with my life. And now I need you to unveil it. I need to receive you. I'm sorry for the things I've done that were wrong. And I need you. I'm confessing you, Lord and Savior of my life. And I want you to wash me in the blood of the Lamb. And I want you to guide my steps, and I want you to control my thoughts and control my actions. And God, let me walk, let me hear, let me see. Everything that I do, let me be through the eyes and the ears and the mouth and the feet of who you are. Let your word be more than printed pages. Let them become the portrait I'm painting today. And I receive you as my Lord and Savior. So God, let the canvas be wiped and let the painting begin anew. And Lord, paint me on that canvas of life the way you have destined me to live and the destiny you've designed for me. Because I need you to take me to your secret place tonight. Hope you enjoyed today. I enjoyed being with you. I enjoyed sharing with you just a very minute part of the miraculous God I've known. And the journey I've traveled. For some, 61 years now. 62 in August. I'll be 62 years old. From my mother's womb to now, it's been a journey that was designed to bring me here. To teach the fatherhood, teach the sonship, the greatness of God. And I know that my voice is reaching many that I will never have the privilege to shake your hand. May not have the privilege to give you a hug. May never ever meet you in person before I cross over. But the day that I cross over, know that if you're not there, I'll be waiting for the rest of my family. For the rest of my family to come into the secret place. Don't you worry. My mentors, the prophets of God, the apostles, the prophetess that have gone on before, will be there. When my time comes, I'll join them. And if you're still alive, when your time comes and you cross over, we will meet you in the secret place of the Most High God, where love abounds forevermore. There'll be no pain, no sorrow, just life. Carry me away. Carry me away on the wings of an eagle. Carry me away been touched and you want to see this ministry continue to reach out to those who need to hear a message like this, you'll find the button at the bottom of the screen you're watching right now. If you're on the website, and you can simply hit it. If you're on Facebook, go to globalmatrixcenter.com and look for the Cyber Church page. It'll be under the archives page, and you'll find a way, or you can go directly to the donation page, and you can be a part of reaching broken lives today with us, and shattered dreams, seeing them put back together again. I want to thank you in advance for your financial support of this vision of living the lifestyle of I am. Today, as we leave the air once again, let's take the canvas and let God begin to repaint the canvas with His destiny and His will. And there we will answer that question, and you too will know that answer. And you can share with others. What is life? God, all-knowing, all-powerful. What is life? God. Live a spiritual encounter and empower God destiny.